Well, from standardizing school uniforms to planting a billion trees, State of the Union addresses traditionally touch on policies presidents would like to see enacted in the coming year. President Obama's speech tonight is expected to be no different. For a behind-the-scenes look into crafting a message like the one we'll hear tonight, Paul Orszalak joins us. He's a former speechwriter to President Bill Clinton and Vice President Al Gore. And Mary Kate Carey is a former speechwriter for President George Bush. Great to have you both with us today and to get your expertise. I thought it was so interesting that both of you had some interesting first thoughts about who gets to write the speech and whether or not that is truly an honor. Mary Kate, you say it's an honor that no one really wants. Why is that?
That's exactly right. It's a bit of a booby prize. I think the problem is many times it's weeks and weeks of work. You know, this year we know President Obama wanted to see a draft over Christmas in Hawaii, so that tells you how far in advance the speechwriters start working. And then in my day, for George H.W. Bush, there were 22 different cabinet officers and senior staff who got to edit the speech well before it ever went to the president. So grueling editing process. And then, as you can imagine, once the speech is delivered, nobody has anything very nice to say about it. So it's a thankless job.
Paul, was that your experience? I know you were able to contribute a portion to the 2000 State of the Union address, focusing specifically on foreign policy. Did you find it sort of that grueling process, and how difficult was it to condense the words into the message that you wanted to express for that one topic?
Well, it is, because you're trying to fit everything the government is doing into an hour, or in the case of President Clinton, an hour and a half, because he gave the longest speeches. But you solicited ideas. You know, cabinet secretaries start this process early as well. They submit memos, they submit language, they're fighting and lobbying to get their priorities into the State of the Union as well. And sifting through all that usually lands on the door of the speechwriter. President Clinton used to introduce the chief speechwriter, as the person who typed my speech. And it was an honor that everybody really competed for, because the time involved was endless, and it always ended up somewhere between a laundry list and a wish list.
Well, and that's an interesting description. Paul, let me just stay with you for a moment, since you worked for a Democratic administration. Here we have a Democratic president. We've just recently received fresh poll numbers, which are fairly consistent with what we've seen over the last several weeks. General pessimism in the country. Not necessarily divided between Republicans and Democrats, just the way that Americans feel. How would you approach the tone for a speech like this? If you were the one that had to craft the message today, even a portion of the speech, how would you address that? Is it in the delivery, or is it in the words?
It's in both, and it's how you project your tone as well as what you say. I think it's clear by now to everybody that the era of big promises in government, at least big new promises, is over. The Wall Street Journal today showed in its poll that most Americans think the State of the Union is divided, and short of Madonna coming out and marrying Democrats and Republicans together tonight, that's not going to change anytime soon. But what the president needs to show is that progress can be made in this environment, and that he's taking action to lead that change, whether Congress wants to join him or not, and hopefully they do.
Mary Kate, who do you think is the audience then tonight? Is it the average Joe? I mean, the speech certainly gets prime time coverage in all the major networks. Is it the average person, or is it Congress? Is it the glitterati in Washington, D.C. that are fluttering around trying to make things happen? Who do you think the president's really speaking to tonight?
I think it's a mix. On some subjects, for example, health care reform, he's got the biggest audience he'll probably have all year to try and convince people to go to the exchanges and sign up. So that's sort of going over the heads of Congress. But when he's talking about, for example, sanctions in Iran, he's speaking to the 535 people in that chamber who he needs to give them time. But in general, I think this is a difficult pickle for the speechwriters to be in, because from all reports I've heard from the White House, he's going to be talking about unilateral executive action, things he can do to go around Congress. And I don't really see how you say that to a packed house full of congressmen. So he's put the speechwriters in a bit of a pickle. Same with what we were saying about the State of the Union being strong. That poll that you were just referring to this morning, only 3% of Americans think, the ones that are polled, think that the State of the Union is strong. Most of them are using words like divided, deteriorating, troubled. That really puts the speechwriters in a pickle. That's a tough job.
An interesting point that Mary Kate makes, Paul. What do you think about that? Is this a time for the president to connect with the public by saying, listen, I'm going to go around people, I'm going to use the executive action because I care about the country, and that's the way we're going to get things done? Is that a winning formula for him now?
Yes. I think it is. You know, it's unconfirmed that his walk-in music tonight will be With or Without You by U2. But for 5 years, we've been talking about, you know, whether we can work together. And every year we hear the same thing. If the president would just come to us and work with us, we'll get things done. Well, we've had the politics of the brick wall for 5 years. We all know that's not really going to happen. This is actually a page straight out of Ronald Reagan's playbook, who signed 200 executive orders when he was president on a wide range of topics when dealing with a Democratic Congress. President Obama has signed less than half of those. And the message is, if we're not going to act together on behalf of the American people, I'm going to take action within my power and within the Constitution by myself.
So you think a little soundtrack by U2 might kind of...
Yeah, I'm a big U2 fan. Yeah, I think it'd be live in the moment. I just want to see some of the people along the aisle dancing to it.
Like Taylor Swift in the Grammys audience, something like that.
There you go.
It could add a little something to it. I mean, the clapping and all of that, it can get a little repetitive. So maybe we could put a little soundtrack.
More fist pumps. Right.
To the speech. That's right. Mary Kate, Paul, great to see you both. Thank you. Nice to have you today.
Appreciate it.